19 minutes past 6, you are watching Breakfast. This morning, the USA and Russia can work together, but Moscow must keep its promises. That is the opinion of the new US Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, after his face-to-face meeting with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
The two men are both attending the G20 summit in Germany as the world wonders what the future holds for relations between the two countries. Marcus Papadopoulos, editor of the magazine Politics First, joins us from our London newsroom now. Very good morning to you, Marcus. Thanks for your time. So this is an important first, if you like, official engagement, isn't it, between the two counterparts? What do you make of what they've said?
Yes, it's very important for Moscow and Washington to have communication with each other. However, there's no such thing as a quick fix in politics, and that is especially true regarding the relationship at the moment between Moscow and Washington. The relationship is absolutely dreadful, and it's difficult to see how it can get any worse. However, on the other hand, it's very difficult to see how it can improve. Ultimately, the Russians have three demands which they will put to the Americans, and it concerns their legitimate concerns regarding NATO, because we have to understand that NATO is no longer a defensive organisation. Since the 1990s, NATO has become an offensive and antagonistic organisation. So the first Russian demand will be for NATO to pull back its military forces from the Baltic states and Poland. Secondly, the Russians will demand that the Americans put into writing that NATO will not invite Ukraine, Moldova or Georgia to join NATO. The Russians are acutely aware of the mistake they made in 1990 when Mikhail Gorbachev failed to get the Americans to put into writing that NATO would not expand eastwards beyond Germany's eastern border into the Baltic states and Eastern Europe.
Marcus, can I just ask on a slightly wider perspective, how difficult is the balancing act that's being played out between those new figures in the Trump administration who are talking, for example, at G20, but also talking about defence matters as well? They are talking about how they will handle the relationship with Russia. How at odds are they with some of the things that Donald Trump has already said about his, if you like, almost a personal relationship with Putin himself?
Well, I think there's a curious and misguided sense of optimism about Donald Trump. Even if Donald Trump is genuine, and I think that's a big if, even if he's genuine about wanting to change American foreign policy towards Russia, he's going to come up against formidable opposition. He's going to come up against Congress, which is overwhelmingly hostile towards Russia. He's going to come up against his own party, the Republican Party, which is hostile towards Russia. He will come up against the Pentagon, the State Department, and the CIA, which is overwhelmingly hostile. And then we have the Defense Secretary, James Mattis, who is very hard-line towards Russia and who said yesterday that there is going to be no military cooperation between Russia and America. So on that note, I think the true face of the Trump administration is coming through. But I also think it's important for me to go back to the third demand the Russians have, and that is for the American missile defense shield, which went active last year in Poland and Romania, and which is aimed at the Russian strategic nuclear deterrent. The Russians will be demanding that that is dismantled. And there's two other demands that the Russians have, which are less significant, but nonetheless they will put it to the Americans. Firstly, for American sanctions to be lifted on Russia, and secondly, for the Crimea to be recognised by America as a part of the Russian Federation. Now, British media and American media have been making a lot of the Crimea, but there's no reason why, if the Americans choose not to recognise the Crimea as part of Russia, that could preclude the possibility of an improvement between relations between Moscow and Washington. We have to remember that the Americans never acknowledged the Baltic states as a part of the Soviet Union. Nonetheless, the Soviet Union and America were able to conclude some significant treaties with each other. For example, the ABM Treaty, the INF Treaty, and of course the START 1 Treaty as well.
Marcus, thank you for your time this morning. That's Marcus Papadopoulos, who's editor of Politics First.